Oh, it's my turn. Okay, great. Hi, everyone. We're going to talk for 45 minutes. You're going to solve the future of your party. Got to be honest, so glad right now it's not mine. And then you all can ask questions, so be thinking about your questions. FYI, they have to actually be questions, not statements with an upward inflection. I need actual questions, all right?
You can tell you're a mom.
Thank you. Yeah.
You're like, listen.
And I will shut you down because I'm a liberal. All right. So, so I want to first start by just getting everyone's take on where you think, we're going to talk about the future of the Republican Party, but where you think the Republican Party is right now. And Governor, I'm going to start with you. I feel like you've really seen it. I feel like the Republican Party has changed a lot in the last 8 years, and you've been either a part of or tossed up and down by some of those changes, and I want to know if you think that's right. Has the party changed? Sure.
It's changed because we have a new leader. And whenever the party changes, the party gets a new leader, it changes, right? I mean, I came into national Republican politics when George W. Bush made me the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey on September 10th, 2001. So the whole world was different then. And, the 8 years I was U.S. Attorney with George W. Bush, much different presidency than what we have now. And so, no matter what a party thinks it is who its leader is. And, the Democratic Party was different under Bill Clinton than it was under Barack Obama, even though many of the same players existed in major positions. The president writes the hymnal and the party sings. And that's the way it works in our system. And so I think that's why the party is different now. The party's different because we have a different leader. Some people sing loudly in the choir from the hymnal. Some people don't like the hymnal as much, so they just pretend that they're singing.
And what about
just have their mouth moving, nothing's coming out?
What about you, Governor? Nobody's listening. It's okay.
What about me?
Yeah. Where are you vis-a-vis the choir?
Oh, listen, I always look at politics as a binary function, right? So to me, people ask me all the time, you were the first major person to endorse Donald Trump at the end of February. Why the hell did you do that? And I said, because I didn't want Hillary Clinton to be president of the United States. And so to me, I looked at it, I'd been in the race, and I knew that none of the rest of those guys who were on the stage were beating Donald Trump. They just weren't. And just because I figured it out at the end of February, it took everybody else a lot longer to figure it out. We all came to the same spot. I knew when Donald Trump won South Carolina by double digits after having won New Hampshire 2-1, if it was any other candidate in my lifetime, the press would have said, it's over. Everyone else should fold up your tents. He's the nominee. Because it was Trump, people went, no. This can't possibly be. No, it's going to be Marco. It's going to be Ted. It's going to be Kasich. It was never going to be any of them. It was going to be him. And so my view was, you can either do one of two things, stand on the sidelines and do nothing, or if you're going to get in for the candidate who you prefer based on what your choices are going to be. It's clear to me our choices were going to be Donald Trump or Hillary Clinton. Given that choice, I'm with Trump.
I'm reminded of the Eric Erickson comment that, if you put a gun to my head and said I have to vote for Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump, I'll take the bullet.
That's easy to say, except nobody does.
I know.
Nobody does.
Valid point.
I appreciate and kind of get the hymnal analogy, but I just feel like I'm the parishioner that also ties and volunteers, and I don't care what the hymnal says because I'm going to look at the Bible. And I just kind of feel like, yes, Trump is in the White House. Yes, there's lots of talk about he is the leader of the party. But from conservatives, we also need to go back to the basics of, I think, constitutional conservatism and understand that, sure, he can be the leader of the party. Sure, he's doing lots of great things. But there are the checks and balances of the other people, and we don't all have to be his yes men.
Well, I mean, just to be clear, I'm not saying everybody has to be a yes man. You're asking me what's the condition of the party. The party reflects the leader. Now, there will be people who will disagree with him on certain things. Some people like Brett Kavanaugh, some people didn't. Some people like the tax plan, some people don't. But the fact is that there's all different kinds of folks who will agree or disagree, but there's no question that the party is Trump's party.
Yeah.
And if you want to change that, then run against them in 2020.
So is the party under Trump a strong party? I mean, it begs the question, the, approval ratings, what's your take?
So I have the chairman of the party sitting here next to me, so I'll let him answer that question a little bit. What was the chairman? No,
Former, big difference.
But I will tell you that.
I'm glad you pointed that out as quickly as you did.
So I will tell you this, kind of echo what the governor said. So I think it's not Trump's party. Trump is the president reflected a mood in America. The people who attend all the rallies, those folks are the Republican Party, right? You're the Republican Party. The president's not the party. The president's the head of the party, but the party is the basket of deplorables. That's the Republican Party, right? I will tell you that, to put a little fine point on what the governor said, I was in Washington and I was working on a bunch of campaigns. I worked on Rick Santorum's 2012 campaign, which saw a little bit of this, and then I was working on his campaign. He drops out, kind of a free agent, and I said, I think Trump's going to be the president. And people said to me, you're out of your mind. And so I threw in the campaign during the primary, and literally my friends were calling me and saying, you're going to ruin your reputation. What are you doing? You've got a good reputation. What are you doing? I said, I see something. I drive around Pennsylvania. I've done a lot of campaigns, and it is something like I've never seen before. People were showing up in the primary in Pennsylvania. I'd go around to the polling places, and people were coming in and say, this is the first time I've ever voted. I mean, they were excited.
But can I
ask
you, to Alicia's point, from supporting Santorum, I mean, it's almost hard to think of two more different candidates.
Not true at all. Because they're both because they're both.
How do you reconcile it under Republican?
Economic populism, right? I mean, if you look at Rick's books, right, what Rick was espousing on the campaign, Rick just didn't say it artfully, right? The president really captured it and got it out there. But there's this great law. I mean, the Democrats abandoned the working class in America, and that's what Donald Trump. Right, he found that vein. As you travel across the Midwest, you go to all these towns, working class town, Ambridge, Pennsylvania, where I was born and raised. Took the president there. No president had come there. No politician had been there before. And all these steel workers, and they showed up, and they're like, "You haven't forgotten us. You got our back." Right, and that's a message that resonates.
So. Former chairman, let me ask, because, look, know your audience. I'll say, as a dyed-in-the-wool non-Trump fan,
You're not a Trump fan?
I know, shocking. Maybe you haven't seen this thing called the internet. But I will say, and I said this from the beginning, I said, if he does something I like, I'll support it. And it's interesting on the economic populism front. Like, listen, I thought his NAFTA correction wasn't as far as I would have gone, but it was good policy. It was better than NAFTA under Bill Clinton. I've said it publicly, and I'll say it again. And to me, it ain't conservative. At least it's not Republican in the sense of the party that you ran.
Right.
And I'm very intrigued. Like I said, glad it's not my party. It's fun to watch with the popcorn how you move forward. Because this is a different, especially economically, it's a different agenda than the party when you ran it.
It is very different. And it's one of those dynamics that for those who are like myself, who have been in the grassroots, and I think, David, you put your finger on the core of where Trump's energy comes from. It's around this sense of a community of people who have felt economically alienated for generations. You look at the industries, whether it's manufacturing, whether it's coal, whatever it happens to be, in between the coasts is America. Right. And that is a real sense of what Trump was able to tap into, because the governor put his finger, I think, on a point that they can't be missed in the sense of the role that individuals play. Donald Trump is the titular head of the party. Now, if we're all honest with ourselves, and I think we need to be, in that Donald Trump is not a tried and true convicted conservative. Donald Trump is not
He's not convicted yet.
He's not a tried.
Oh, that's not what you meant. Sorry.
He's not a tried and true Republican.
Joke, guys.
But that's fine. That's fine. What Donald Trump was able to do was to step into what was raging beneath the surface for the last 35 years. And I can tell you, I've been a Republican now. This November will be 43 years. And I've walked that walk in many a community, and you haven't lived it until you've tried it as a black Roman Catholic conservative from Washington, D.C., all right? So I know well of what I speak, having led the party as a county chairman, a state chairman, a national chairman, and elected official. The only one at this level who's ever done that. And so my sense of where the party was going post-Reagan was into a space where they were looking for the next Ronald Reagan. That individual never really emerged. There were competing factions and interests that began to form within the party at the grassroots level. And it was magnified and exemplified by Tea Party. It was magnified and exemplified by certain candidates who would merge and then fall back. But no one who really galvanized that middle of the country, that sense of connecting their economic concerns, their fears about the direction of the country, the value system that they saw the country beginning to espouse. There was no one who really connected those dots for them until Trump. Those were the forgotten voters in many respects who didn't have a chance to really speak.
Yeezy sneakers. Does everybody see the Yeezy? Hang on, wait. I want to bring Charlie in on this. What's your take? I mean, how much is this a cognitive dissonance moment?
The party is stronger than ever, thanks to Donald Trump. And look, you see in the Brett Kavanaugh fight, we're finally a party that's not afraid to fight, metaphorically, not literally fight like the Democrats. You know.
You mean like
when Hillary?
You don't want to do this. You mean like your guy the other day praising?
Hillary Clinton
it's fine.
saying you can't be civil. Eric Holder say when they go low,
all right,
we pick them. You know, stuff like that. That's the Democrat Party. Let's not. Your mobs were jobs.
I know. We're gonna.
But any other Republican president in the modern era, which basically is only two of them, H.W. or W. Bush, would have withdrawn the nomination of Brett Kavanaugh with the amount of media uproar that happened over the course of a week. Donald Trump stood by his nominee, rightfully and courageously, and now we have Justice Brett Kavanaugh.
But let me ask a question. Hang on. I'm going to get to you two in a second. Charlie, let me, apart from Greg Gianforte, let me get to a question for you about, it does seem like part of what's also changed in politics and changed in the Republican Party, and maybe it presages a change for both parties, is no longer caring about these mythical unicorn swing voters and just saying, I'm going to play to the base, And that, because I'm not, actually, if we look at numbers, and I'm not being partisan here, I just mean, if you look at the popularity numbers, you're not doing that great, but it's still working because the base loves you. And is that the new strategy? Is that the new normal?
The political philosophy that Donald Trump put forward is one that I actually think is healthier for a party, which is you strengthen your base, then you find 2 to 3 issues that the other side has ignored that does not compromise your core values or principles, such as the disaffected working class in the middle of the country, essentially anywhere between Manhattan and Malibu. And you talk about strong judges, strong justices, and then you win over the next 8 to 10% of what would be called Reagan Democrats. So it worked for Ronald Reagan in a tremendously successful way, it worked for Donald Trump, where Mitt Romney and H.W. Bush failed in their reelect is they thought they just had to win suburban swing voters. What happens is then you lose 3 to 5% of your base. And W. Bush admitted in his reelection campaign in 2004, you turn out your base, you're going to win the election. So I'm always of the opinion that base politics works. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, I would say that in some of these Senate seats, Heidi Heitkamp basically should be looking for her next lobbying gig because she's so out of touch with the voters in North Dakota. And the same could be said for some of the... Again,
fun though it is to bash Democrats, we're talking about your party.
So the question is this, right? I think you started with the premise, like, what does the Republican Party look like? So, there used to be this notion of the party was, this party of Wall Street, like white working, white, educated men.
Old rich white guys.
Yeah. This president, so what has happened is the party's been completely transformed, right, into something it's never been before, right? So the president's extremely conservative on judges. This president is doing something that the media doesn't really pay a great deal of attention to, but has reshaped the judiciary for years to come. 84 members of the court have been put in the past 2 years, the most successful president in the history. He's got, they just cut a deal with the Democrats here before they left to go out of town to put 15 more judges on. There are 11 more judges that are going to get done probably in lame duck, and there are 22 more vacancies coming up during the next 2 presidential years. So the judiciary will be overwhelmingly very, very conservative, right? And so, but fiscally, right? This president, we have big deficits, right? Which is not traditional Republican mantra, right? The Republican mantra is cut spending, right? Strong defense, cut spending, lower taxes, right? right? We have a huge deficit right now that a lot of old school Republicans are kind of wringing their hands about, the Larry Kudlows of the world. We're going to I believe we're going to grow our way out of it. But there's, in terms of what the party is, this is the party of Donald Trump. It's not the Republican Party anymore. This is the party of Donald Trump. And just to put one quick fine point on it, because I never forget this, Barack Obama, when he was out here at a fundraiser on the West Coast, talked about Pennsylvanians clinging to guns, God, and religion, right? And those voters in Pennsylvania didn't forget that, right? I mean, there's shirts. People wear shirts in Pennsylvania, guns, God. People are proud of that. And Democrats just have forgotten that.
We can be elitist and insulting jerks.
Can I just give a
Yes,
shout
thank
out
you.
real quick about the judiciary, because that is the biggest win of President Trump's
Totally agree.
time so far. We cannot forget the amazing Cocaine Mitch and how he was able to. How he was also able to help the president up on the Hill to maintain that support. And I I part of the reason why President Trump didn't back down.
Alicia, can I ask you a question? Hang on, Charlie. Hang on, Alicia.
Yeah.
It seems though that part of what you're doing is evoking a lot of what sort of conventional conservatives feel in this moment, which is, I don't like Trump's style. I don't like some of his, but I sure like what the guy's doing. And it's been interesting to see so many Republicans, especially in Congress, who started out so opposed, now say,
Lindsey Graham.
Right, Lindsey Graham.
Oh, man, Lindsey 2.0.
Do you feel the same way, too? I mean, that it's sort of like, I'll complain about Trump till the cows come home, but you're happy with...
I'm happy with a lot of the decisions that he's making. I'm not happy with the trade things. I'm incredibly happy with the judge decisions that he's been making. I think that it is fascinating. Like the Kavanaugh thing, I wanted Amy Coney Barrett. I was like, give me Amy. I want Amy. Kavanaugh's kind of a squish. And then...
Hey, you keep your hands off Ginsburg.
And then...
Somebody knock some wood fast.
And then really the whole entire Kavanaugh fiasco and incredible attack on that man and his entire family. Like as a mother and a wife, I cannot comprehend what his poor wife went through. Really solidified my, I'm voting for Trump in 2020, because if this is the way that the left, if this is the way that the left is going to react, and this is the way that they are going to treat a man who, by the way, governed made judicial decisions 98% of the time very similar to Merrick Garland, then what else are they going to do when somebody like my girl Amy Coney Barrett gets up there?
So, Governor, when we're talking about this sort of shift in the policy of the Republican Party, you're, in a lot of ways, you represent that sort of conventional core. You'd be the guy outraged about the deficits.
Free trade.
Right? You're a big free... How do you reconcile that?
Well, first off, it's because I know the president, and I know that he's for free trade. He's for free trade. He's just... Listen, if people ask me all the time about Donald Trump and trade, he's changed his positions on almost everything over the course of his career, except for that. If you go back to the 80s with Donald Trump on Phil Donahue, which many of you in this audience won't know who the hell Phil Donahue is, but if you go back to Donald Trump being interviewed by Phil Donahue, he was talking then about the Japanese taking advantage of us and unfair trade agreements. And I think the proof is in what he's accomplished. Better deal with Mexico, better deal with Canada, better deal with South Korea. And that's just a fact. I mean, these trade deals are fair for the United States. And Trump's idea of free trade is purely free trade. Right. That if you give the American people the opportunity to compete on a completely level playing field, that they will beat anybody in the world. And that we haven't been competing on a level playing field, but still winning. And that's why he said, imagine how much we're going to win if it's level. You want fair trades? No tariffs from us, no tariffs from you. So I think he is a free trader. That's how I justify that part. But I think the other thing on Mitch is people miss, because the president has so much bombast, they miss some of the subtlety. This guy is a total deal maker. That is what he is. I mean, that's why his positions have changed so much over time, because he's not wed to any particular ideology. He's wed to trying to be perceived as a winner. So Steve Bannon, who is not that at all in any way, either principled or a winner, he's out there beating the bejesus out of Mitch McConnell and killing Mitch McConnell when he was sitting in the White House. And what Trump finally understood when they got Bannon out of there was Mitch McConnell can help me. Like, if I just be nice to Mitch McConnell 3 days a week, Like, he's going to help make me a historical figure. And as soon as Trump figured out that there was a deal to be made with Mitch McConnell, there's a deal to be made with Lindsey Graham, there's deals to be made with these guys, he made them. And so the way I rationalize all of this is that the president ultimately, at his core, is someone who believes that fair trade is free trade, purely free trade. And on the issue of him as an establishment figure, this guy will make a deal with anybody, including Chuck Schumer.
That's right.
If he feels like it's going to make him a winner and that it's going to make the country a winner. And that's not a bad president to have, everybody. It's not a bad president to have.
Let me ask you a question, then I'm going to go to you, Charlie. Do you think that, I mean, one could argue there's a trend that in politics that began back in, Kennedy-Nixon era, but has been speeding up in the modern era? And do you think we're getting to the point where effectively style matters more than substance, and we are reaching a sort of end of ideology moment where, look, if you can win and you're conservative enough, or that it matters that personality trumps, literally and figuratively?
If style didn't always matter more than substance, Adlai Stevenson would have been president, for God's sake, right? Mike Dukakis. I mean, style always matters more. It always has mattered more.
But you don't think we've now?
No, listen. It's a different world because the media is different. The speed of communication is different, and we're overwhelmed by it, right? But listen, the fact that like Donald Trump is a television star who becomes president of the United States, you're saying his style was more overwhelming than Jack Kennedy's style, who was a first term, just barely second term United States Senator from Massachusetts, who basically was a factor in the race because his father bought his way in, right? Let's be fair about it. That's the way it is. So I think style always has been very important because it's a big, huge national election. It's tough for the electorate to make a decision on substance. Substance is decided when you get into office. Right. And then they could tell, do you surround yourself with people who help bring out the substance in you and supplement your substance to make you a better leader. That's when we see it. In campaigns, style always wins out. People want that electricity between them and the candidate they're going to vote for.
And I think why that worked so well for President Trump was he had done something that no one up to that point had really done effectively. And that was because he had the means to do it. He had been in people's living rooms for 10, 15 years prior to getting into the race, even though he had, in that same period, run for president back in '88 and in the '90s. He made that attempt. But what he realized and figured out was how to convert his viewers into his voters. And that was that uncounted, unsung voter out there that no one paid attention to since Reagan left office. Those folks who felt further and further disengaged and removed from the process. He got them off their couch and moved them towards the television. He got them beyond the television to actually go to a rally. He got them to go out from a rally to take a yard sign. He got them to put that yard sign in their yard and then actually go work the polls and then ultimately vote. So he understood how to use the style and the substance, the bravado of being the showman, of being the Donald, and translating that for voters so that they latched onto him in a way that you didn't see them latch onto, with all due respect to my friend here, the other 15 on the stage. And that was a dynamic that even they could not counter in that moment. And we saw it time and time again in those debates where there was no comeback, there was no response, because he has so defined that space and that stage in that moment that it was his. And those voters have been with him, those viewers/voters have been with him ever since.
Does it matter anymore? Yes, Charlie.
Well, about the U.S. Senate and complimenting Mitch McConnell, that's correct, but Mitch McConnell's majority leader because of Donald Trump, specifically because of two states. Pat Toomey and Ron Johnson were in very tightly contested reelection bids in states that Donald Trump carried. And he brought out Democrats to pull a Republican ballot for the first time in their lifetime. Otherwise, it would have been Chuck Schumer who would have probably been majority leader if Donald Trump would not have brought out another 100,000 working class, middle class voters. The second thing I'll say is this.
But also Democrats stayed home in the Rust Belt
without a doubt.
places like Pennsylvania because Hillary Clinton did not get the same amount of, if you combine what Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton got in Pennsylvania, for example, it does not equal what Barack Obama was able to get during his reelection in 2012.
No doubt, but I mean, I'm more of the opinion that Donald Trump won, not that Hillary Clinton lost. Yeah. We can talk about that, but because he talked to a part of America that has been ignored for 30 years, and we can litigate that. But
you can't say that they all turned out for him.
No doubt. No, I mean, the Democrats nominated probably the worst person they could have ran for president.
Yeah.
Right, but they didn't turn out for him either, is her point. They didn't,
Well,
right. Go ahead. Finish your point.
So the only one who actually was on the campaign, right? I actually ran the state of Pennsylvania. The president won Pennsylvania. Hillary Clinton's numbers in Pennsylvania would have won any other year. Her numbers are extremely high in southeast Pennsylvania. So to Charlie's point, the president won, Hillary didn't.
I think it's important to note, though, that the long-term policy objectives of the Republican conservative community are being accomplished by this president, whether it be the largest tax cut in a generation, the judges, as Alicia pointed out, being energy independent, opening up ANWR in Alaska, denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula. If a Democrat had accomplished 1/10 of what Trump has done in Korea, they would already give him, well, they already did give him the Nobel Prize for doing nothing, but they would give him a lot more than that. They would enshrine him in some sort of UN.
I feel like a martyr, but it's fine. Go on, Charlie.
Look, it's inarguable. You have to
No. Just
witnessing
again.
the end of the Korean War is something that all of us should applaud and appreciate. And by the way, the network that you're on.
We witnessed the end of the Korean War?
Yeah,
we're watching it right now. They have a joint bid for the Olympics. They're hugging. They're talking about how they're no longer going to go to war. You're seeing denuclearization on both sides. You have to admit, progress on the Korean Peninsula is both historic and...
I can't wait for the history books to be written. We're going to move to questions soon. Everybody thinking... Oh, wait. You finish your thought. Go ahead.
The final point is, though, I will take a little objection that this president is somehow not a conservative president. Okay. Because from tax cuts to deregulations to the judges to the foreign policy objectives, he's been a very conservative.
Can I just look? I don't want to get into this, but let us.
Oh, but let's.
We've got to be honest. We got to be honest.
I think it's perfect, by the way, that I'm in the middle.
But here is the truth of this. He is not philosophically a conservative.
The governor even admitted that earlier.
Let me finish my point. So what you're talking about is a reflection of a pre-existing Republican agenda that the leadership brought to the table, and Donald Trump has accepted and adopted. It is not his orientation. It is not his philosophy. And you cannot, I'm just telling you folks, you cannot screw the pooch on this and think that this is going to be the argument that he's going to make going forward without that kind of support. Because as you rightly noted, and we've already seen it, Donald Trump will do a deal with whomever is sitting in front of him. And he doesn't give a damn if Republicans keep the House this November or lose it. Because
he really cares.
No, he doesn't.
Not even close to
All right.
Hang on, let's
Let me finish the point.
Hey, it's their panel, not yours. Line up and ask a question. Go ahead, Chairman.
And yeah, I'm being honest and I'm going there. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's a recognition of the truth of the man. I know the man. I've worked with the man. I've been in the room with the man in these situations. And he will deal with who's ever in front of him. And if you can put your blinders on and keep them on, but do not be shocked if Chuck Schumer some days becomes majority leader, or Nancy Pelosi is sitting across from him and he cuts the deals that he thinks are important for him to cut. You've got to be honest about that. I get the moment.
Well, look what he was willing to do on immigration reform. I also don't know if you know this, but I'm going to be the next Supreme Court justice. So
I'm just saying.
Wait. We're about to move to.
Man's not a conservative. Sorry.
Man, don't tell me your party isn't messy and then have this messy panel.
We're winning.
Quick question. Show of hands. Yeah. Show of hands. By the way, I'm just going to say for the record, as a dyed-in-the-wool Democrat, I still think the country would be in better shape had this man won your presidency, been your presidential candidate. I'm just saying it.
I don't know if that's good or bad.
Just saying it.
All right. Yeah.
I'm just saying it. I'd go to sleep better at night. Now, show of hands. Their panel, my panel, not yours. Show of hands. Who thinks shoe-in absolutely Trump's reelected in 2020? Okay.
If it's today.
If the election's held today without any more tapes coming out. And who thinks the Democrats are flipping the House?
Flipping the House?
Flipping the House.
Yeah.
Okay, there you go. All right, so we're going to take it to some questions. Ever the optimist, easy. Okay, remember, questions, not statements with an upward inflection. Yes, go ahead.
Is it on? Okay.
I
happen to be a Republican. I'm also gay. The community, and especially those on the media, tend to speak on our behalf, but they don't. How do I counter that as a gay Republican, that this is my party. Trump speaks for me. The left does not. How do I counter that?
How do you,
I think you did. He won.
yeah, you won. Yeah.
Right? So, I mean, listen,
Yeah.
all the rest of this stuff is theater and is background noise. What matters in the American political system is who wins and who loses. And those who win get to govern and make the decisions, and those who lose get to talk. Right? So, don't be frustrated.
Yeah.
You won.
You won.
And if they're saying stuff on TV you don't like, turn it off.
I'm pretty
Don't.
sure, though, he's not just dealing with the stuff that they're saying on TV. If you live here in LA, you're dealing with your friends, your family, your job.
See me afterwards, and I'll get you connected with some of the folks in the LGBT community who are huge Trump supporters and are working with the president.
Yeah.
We'll get you connected.
I mean, I also do think I'm curious this was an interesting thing. I thought that the 2016 election signaled, in a way, the possible end of certain aspects of the culture war, right? That finally you at least had both parties that were going to say, all right, we're here on gay rights. Now, it hasn't proven the same on issues of Islam or issues of immigration or whatever, but it does feel like, at least in that, there was a real moment of reckoning. It was sort of taken off the table. Hillary for president.
Hi, everyone. My name is Jesse Alvarez. So I grew up as a Christian missionary kid overseas in Lima, Peru, in South America. I lived there from birth to age 19. I did a gap year in Paris, France, then at a Latin American church. And now I'm now currently in law school at the University of San Diego. But my question is right now we have over 41 million Spanish speakers in the United States, over 15 million just in California. And I see such an appalling absence of mainstream media in Spanish that's conservative. There's almost nothing. And I've tried writing into Daily Wire, to Breitbart, to Fox, always pitching the idea, hey, I've worked in professional translating before. I'm a conservative in grad school. Can I, contribute in translating articles, translating podcasts, something? And I'm always told, oh, well, there's not enough Spanish-speaking conservatives out there for it to be worthwhile, for us to make enough money. But I'm always of the mind that, if you build it, they'll come. And I'm wondering, what do you guys think needs to be done in order to make that push that there could be mainstream conservative media in Spanish? It's really hard to bring conservatives otherwise to the table.
Well,
Let me let Alicia in on this. Yeah. And also, can you speak to because it seemed like the Republican Party in general was going in a more encouraging direction vis-a-vis the Latino vote, and in general, where's that? Broaden the question out a little bit. Where's it going?
Just a real quick point, too, that Spanish speakers tend to be more conservative, too, socially and what have you, too. So that's why I'm kind of surprised there's not more media.
You're right.
Historically tend to be Roman Catholic. And despite the issues that I have with some of the Pope's views, at least the Catholic Church, last I checked, is upholding the biblical principle and the sanctity of life. So kudos to the Catholic Church for that. I think it's I am also with you. I have this same conversation and debate with people all the time of we need to represent conservative women better on all platforms. And it's there isn't the conservative female market. 75% of the conservative audience is male. And I'm very much of the, if we build it, they will come too. So keep doing what you're doing. Keep fighting, keep tweeting, keep writing. Good. Yeah, I do not have the golden answer. I mean, my girlfriend, Kristen Soltis Anderson, is a Republican pollster that does a lot of coverage, wrote about this millennial vote, wrote about how millennial women are wary of Trump, even post the Kavanaugh thing. And I think that it is a concern for the Republican Party that there's this low-hanging fruit that they just seem to be avoiding. I mean, if you're not going after it, why are you hiding from it? And I think that it's something that needs to be dealt with for sure.
Great point. Yes, question.
So going off of that, in what ways has Trump helped millennial women, would you say?
Anybody?
What has he
Trump
done for
helped
millennial
women?
Mother,
You got an hour?
As a mother.
I mean, give me a couple.
I could let
Because I haven't seen one.
Not one? How
Let's
about
hear
the
Charlie.
lowest woman unemployment rate in 60 years, just to start? How about the
Is
lowest?
that singular to women?
How about the lowest
Is that singular to women,
rate
though?
in 55 years? How about the average mother now can deduct an additional $2,500 in a child tax care credit under the GOP tax code?
Okay, there you go.
Okay.
There's some answers.
Right?
Great,
We're going to
that's
try to
great.
get in as many questions as we can. Don't argue with him.
I would also
Go ahead.
caveat,
Do it.
since Charlie answered for me, I would also add that
Mansplaining. Just kidding, Charlie. Just kidding.
The strides.
Assume my gender?
Okay, y'all just go for it.
Sorry. Go ahead, Alicia. Come on. Sorry.
The strides that we've made with nixing the horrific Iran deal, yes. The strides that we are making, although there's much more that needs to be done with the abomination that is North Korea and the regime there, the evil regime there. But national security, it is something that I pay attention to. And crime is something as a mother that sends 3 girls to school that I pay attention to. So I would add that in addition to everything that Charlie brought up.
This gentleman over here.
Thank you. My name is John Bull. Thank you so much for coming, by the way. My question is to you. In your opinion, I'm a big fan of the wall. When do you think that might be?
Which you? Oh, just all of the yous?
Me personally. I'm a big fan of the wall. Sorry.
Sorry.
When do you think it might go up? I've seen prototypes on YouTube and stuff. In your opinion, what year do you think it might go up if it will go up?
The wall.
This is the guy that's hanging out in the Oval Office getting easy.
Charlie Kirk.
He's
Charlie Kirk, when are we seeing a wall?
Gotta build the wall. This caravan might be the greatest commercial for the wall that I've ever. Look, Mitch McConnell said hopefully we'll get funding by December. I mean, again, as to Governor Christie's point, you start working with the Senate, you might actually get what you're asking for.
Yeah.
You have a $4.4 trillion budget. I can't understand why they can't find $10 billion for a wall that is a national security and a domestic security issue, and one about sovereignty, the rule of law, to stop the flow of child sex traffickers, MS-13 members, guns, and drugs into our country.
Even though it's 13.
This might be the hardest thing I've ever done, people, and I want you to know that. Yes. Next question, yeah.
Hi, I'm Dylan. I'm a freshman in high school, and I just want to say, Mr. Charlie Kirk, I'm a big fan of yours.
Thank you.
Got a question, Dylan?
Yes, I do. You stated that Trump is a fundamental conservative, but how can you back up that statement when Trump supports things such as universal health care, government-run health care, or same-sex marriage, and things like that, tariffs, etc.?
If I misspoke, I'll correct it, but I said he's governing as a conservative, that the policy objectives of the conservative community are being accomplished. I would actually agree. He's not a doctrinaire.
Right, that was my point, Charlie. Yeah, we agree.
Misspoke,
Pragmatist.
I'll correct
Right.
it right now.
Right.
But I will say this. He's the first president in American history that was actually indifferent or at least pro-gay marriage in American history. I don't think that's a conservative or liberal issue anymore. I think that's settled law, and I actually have taken so much heat in the conservative community for having that position. You might actually like to hear that. Who knows? Second thing.
Time do we have?
So is your head spinning or what?
Natural
It's making up for all the times I'm throwing up in my mouth on this panel. It's fine.
That's good.
It's all right.
Good. The second thing, his instincts because of the previous administration, we were governed so out of whack of what would be considered to be traditional, even capitalist free market policy. His instincts to deregulate the economy, to lower taxes, and to rein in some government overreach tends to be conservative because he's presented with the facts and the ideas that any businessman, when put forth with these problems, would govern in a more conservative capacity. But I don't think he's a doctrinaire conservative. I think that's okay because George W. Bush was a doctrinaire conservative who governed like a liberal. So I'd rather have someone who's pragmatic that does the right thing than be someone like George W. Bush, who everyone said he's so wonderfully conservative. Then we got Medicare Part D, a horrific war in the Middle East. We borrowed $8 trillion. We had No Child Left Behind, which was supposed to be this great bipartisan deal that ended up screwing up public education as we know it. Every single federal bureaucracy grew under George W. Bush. He was a doctrinaire conservative that ruled like a Democrat.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Michael Wan, politics editor for Korea Daily. So I think the Trump-Russia collusion is a complete nonsense, fabricated from the beginning. So my question is, how come there's no outcry for Hillary Clinton and the DNC campaign hiring Perkins Coie, hiring Fusion GPS, and hiring former MI6 agent Christopher Steele, and Christopher Steele got these fabricated dossiers from the Russians.
I mean, like she lost you once.
From
so,
the Russians.
so go ahead,
So
Governor.
that's a real collusion there, but I don't see a lot of outcry from the
You asked your
conservatives.
question. Let's
So
let the
I wanted
governor
to know
answer.
your
Go ahead.
opinion. I already got...
Yeah, listen, I think this is a symptom, what you're talking about, is a symptom of the fact that we've had a Justice Department, quite frankly, under this president, that in many ways has been completely dysfunctional. And the fact is that it's hard to be Attorney General of the United States. And it's hard to be a prosecutor because there are going to be times you have to do things which people aren't going to think are popular, but are in the long-term constitutional interest of the country. And we have not had that at the Justice Department under this president. And so if you're asking that question, it's a good question to ask. Why are we investigating Russian collusion on the Republican side but not the Democratic side? And I sense that it's because you've had people making decisions who have felt compromised themselves, and they didn't know whether they could be daring, whether they could be bold, and as a result, they just checked out.
I think he's referring to the Attorney General.
Yeah, I mean, well,
we're going to bash.
but I mean, it's, and I think that the president's frustration over this is legitimate. That he believes that, and let's end the myth on this that Jeff Sessions recused because he was involved in the campaign. Eric Holder was involved in President Obama's campaign and recused on anything. Jeff Sessions recused.
That's because he's a dishonest guy.
Well, hold on a second, though.
I wouldn't hold Eric Holder. I pray to God
in front of Congress on the 27th. That's
exactly right. That's exactly right. The reason
January.
he did, because he knew on January 20th that he was involved in the campaign, and if that was the basis for an honest recusal, he would have recused the day he took the oath. He didn't. He didn't recuse till March. So it wasn't, Charlie, just that he misspoke on the 27th. It's that he got caught in March having misspoken on the 27th. And then people were camped outside his house and putting cameras in front of him. And he went, I'd rather not. I'll recuse. Right. So don't lie to me about the fact that the basis of this recusal was some honest recusal. That's baloney. Because if it was, Jeff Sessions knew from the day he was asked to be Attorney General that he had been involved with the campaign, that he had been a surrogate. And if he thought, and the Russian investigation and the allegations were already going on then. So it wasn't like you go, oh, well, this came up out of nowhere. I had no idea. Of course he knew. He didn't tell the truth in front of Congress about his interaction with the Russians. And once he got caught on that, here's what I say about people.
So then how come Trump didn't ask him to resign when he didn't tell the truth to Congress?
Well, let me say this. I think that the president got talked out of it by the staff at the time, who just said to him, you can't do this. Right. But the last thing I'll say is this, and this is, and I told the president this when he was making some of these selections. There are certain positions in the government where you have to have people with spines of steel. Others you don't. Secretary of Commerce, right? But like Attorney General, Secretary of Defense, White House Chief of Staff. Those three jobs, you better have someone with a spine of steel, because their jobs are to bring news to the president he doesn't want to hear, and to take stuff off the president's desk and handle for him that the president shouldn't have to deal with. And he did real well on the defense side. He missed on Attorney General and on his first Chief of Staff. And he paid for that. He paid a huge price for that. In the end, here's what you got to look at when you look at people who have been in political life that get appointed to things. If you've never felt real heat in your life before, and then all of a sudden you're feeling that heat, and you think you're getting third-degree burns when all you're getting is a tan.
Yeah.
But you don't know the difference.
Don't know the difference.
And what Charlie pointed out is when Jeff Sessions felt the heat in March, he thought he was getting third-degree burns. All he was getting was a tan, and he backed off.
And not a real good tan.
That's right. And it cost the president a good part of his first term with an enormous distraction that I don't think factually will ever become justified. And it really diminished the authority of the Justice Department to do what you're talking about. Because now if they do it, they look like they're doing it in a retaliatory way. If they had done it from the beginning out of a position of principle that they were going to look at both, they would have done it out of position.
So let me ask a question, Governor. Applaud.
So do you think Trump...
Wait, hang on. Here's my question, because I want to get in other questions too, but moderator privilege. You obviously look pretty tan right now.
I am.
And you have the qualifications. So fast forward to a point where, for whatever reason, Jeff Sessions is no longer Attorney General, you'd obviously be at the top of the list. If you were to be Attorney General under President Trump, would you bring a criminal investigation against Hillary Clinton?
If I were Attorney General, I would make every judgment based upon what's in the best interest of the country and what's in the best interest of justice, and that's the only way you make those decisions.
But do you think there are
I'm not going to listen. By the way,
that's a question for the Senate Judiciary Committee to ask.
Wait a second. But by the way, you know what I know? I know I don't know all the facts that I would need to know to make that judgment. And you don't prejudge those things. But you must have the intent and the strength to be able, if the facts get presented to you, even if it's going to make you uncomfortable, even if it's going to put you in a bad spot politically, you're not the president, you're the Attorney General. You make the judgment because your job, as I told every AUSA I hired when I was U.S. Attorney, the last thing I did before I swore him in, I said, read that seal to me on the wall. And they said, the Latin? I said, no, the English. Read what it says. And they say, Department of Justice. I go, that's right. Your job every day is to do justice. And the day you forget that, pack your boxes and walk out the door. And unfortunately, I think there's some people in the Department of Justice, most particularly James Comey, who forgot that that's what that seal says, and it cost us a lot.
So do you think Trump
No.
appointing...
Sorry, sir. Wait, we only got a few more minutes. I'm sorry. Yes, go ahead.
So a lot of strategy regarding Republicans attracting more youth voters has been focused around millennials. However, millennials are pretty small in their support of conservatives. What kind of strategy do you think the Republicans and conservatives should take in capturing Gen Z, which is now slowly starting to come into the fray?
Here you go. The Z people.
Alicia?
I'm actually a grandma millennial.
All right.
So the data actually shows that Generation Z is on pace to be significantly more conservative than the millennial generation.
Yep.
And that's very encouraging. There's a lot of different reasons for it, and there is some disagreement, but the pendulum theory is the most, I think, most people agree on. That's the consensus, that millennials have gone significantly to the left, therefore the next generation tends to correct that to some degree, just like the youth generation before millennials was a little more center-right. But I will say this, we have to recognize that it's been both political parties that have screwed our generation over. And despite myself being a Trump supporter and being a conservative, I think the Republican Party loses when we think that we have been perfect over the last 20, 30 years, while Washington, D.C. gets significantly richer, stronger, more out of touch with middle America. I think our generation was attracted to Bernie Sanders because he was so authentic in his approach and quite honestly, put blame on both sides of the aisle. His solutions were completely and totally wrong and horrific. However, there was some truth to what he was saying, that there was a growing political class that was growing out of touch with mainstream America. I think the number one issue that our generation has to tackle is a ruling class, is what I like to call them, that has zero accountability to our generation. They think they can spend money that is ours, they can decrease freedom that is ours, with zero recourse and zero responsibility from us whatsoever. And so that's the sort of message that is traditionally more libertarian than conservative. The final thing I'll say is this: a civil libertarian, center-right conservative economic message, I think, can win our generation over completely and totally, more so than a cultural Marxist leftist perspective where they want to silence speech, put forth.
And interestingly, in 2016 and even since, people, when they are asked about Bernie Sanders on both sides of the aisle, say that he is authentic, and people when they're asked about Donald Trump also say that he is authentic. And they are both kind of interesting characters in that way because they're representing different sides of the aisle. And I think that I am entertained by watching Sally's party at this point, and I'm also kind of entertained at watching ours because there is this dialogue and sometimes division and debate in both parties about what is the future. Mm-hmm. And I think that the Republican Party specifically needs to be very honest with itself. And sometimes our problem is thinking election to election. And I think that we need to be thinking generation to generation.
Great point. All right, so we're going to take one more question, then I'm going to get some quick closing comments because we're almost out of time. I'm sorry, folks. Go ahead. You, sir, in the MAGA hat. It's hard to distinguish. There are so many. Go ahead.
Well, I'm a conservative millennial, born and raised here in the state of California. And you were saying how the Republican Party is getting stronger. And on nationwide level, I can agree with that. However, here in the state of California, the Republican Party, I don't think it's doing very well, if not at all, just falling apart.
Can't get much worse.
Newsflash.
And the Republican Party didn't even nominate a senator for the Senate. So now we have two Democrats running for Senate in the
that part
California.
Of that, though, is because we have the top two.
Yeah, I know why. But getting to my question, what I would like to know is what can we do here in California to strengthen the Republican Party?
Move. I think move is the best thing.
Just because of timing. Because of timing, I'm going to take that question, which is a great question, and actually let's use it as our final remarks for everyone. What is to your point, thinking generationally, not just the next 2 months or 2 years, but what's the one thing, given all your support and for the president of the party, what's the one thing you would like to see the party do better over the next 10 to 20 years? Charlie, start with you.
Next 10 to 20 years, not be afraid to go places where we're yelled at and screamed at and hear ideas we disagree with. I think both sides can do that. I think we as conservatives tend to do that when we go to college campuses and we get screamed at a lot. But when we stop talking, really bad things are going to start happening. That's where tribalism happens and division.
Dinner.
Right, or you get, yeah, precisely. But I'll say the number one thing over the next 10 to 20 years, I'd like to see the Republican Party on a fiscal and government spending side truly be this party of small government. And that's something that Governor Christie tried to campaign on. And it turns out that boomers in Indiana don't want to hear about entitlement reform, despite our generation being the one that's going to have to be bankrupted because of it. So tough choices are going to have to be made, even if political consequences have to be endured. And I'd love to see our party have the courage and the conviction to get that done over the next 10 to 20 years.
Messaging, messaging, messaging.
Just do it better or do
it better.
Say more.
We do not do it well. And I think that that is part of the appeal to Donald Trump, even if there are things that he says in his delivery that I disagree with the delivery or the substance of what he is saying. And I think that as a whole, in order to impact and affect the next generation, we need to look. And it's, I mean, listen, I love being a part of the tiny conservative contingency here in Los Angeles. And I think that it's important to have conservatives here. I don't want them moving. I want them to come here. I want you to get married, be fruitful, and multiply. Seriously, I want you to affect and
I have so many jokes, Alicia, and I can't make them all on stage right now.
I know.
And they're good.
Tell me.
They're good.
They're good.
Seriously, I want people, not just in politics, to be working on our messaging, but in media, in entertainment, in music, in fiction, in everything.
Go there.
So go there, do those things, and not just have it be a whole bunch of old white guys.
So to kind of take on that point, I think we need to have a message, right, that resonates amongst a completely different demographic, right? As America gets, we talked about the Hispanic Latino population in America. Republicans have traditionally done a really terrible job of messaging, right? To your point, lots of folks are really conservative, go to church, pro-life, but yet we ignore an entire at our own peril, we ignore it entirely. The African-American community, very religious. We at our own peril as a party, we ignore that. So I'd like to see over the next decade, a real effort to have outreach to those communities.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack with
Pick something.
That's a quick one. That's a quick one.
I know, we got to wrap, so pick something.
So real quick, don't move. Number one.
We need you in Pennsylvania.
You need to understand, I think the core of politics is about understanding where you are. Not where you want to be. And I think the parties tend to project where they want to be instead of appreciating where they are. In this state of California, you have elected Republicans statewide. You've elected Republicans locally. So why the hell would you move? All right? Get your shit together. Get it right here. Moving doesn't change anything. All right? If that were the case, I would not have been the lieutenant governor, Republican lieutenant governor of a blue state. And I did not compromise my position on life. I did not compromise position on the Second Amendment. I did not compromise my position on the family in that effort because I understood where I lived. And I understood how to communicate to the people where I lived, to touch on the values that they hold consistent with mine, where I had 5 Democrats sitting in office support me for the United States Senate in 2006. To their great peril, I didn't compromise any of my values or principles. I spoke to the community from which I came because I understood that community. And to your point about the outreach question, just drop that crap, right? Because outreach is not a photo op. It requires you to actually put yourself on the line and communicate with people. And communication starts with listening to what they're saying because they'll tell you what they want.
Governor, in closing?
I'd say, since I get the benefit of going last, I'm going to build off what everybody else has said. I think substantively, Charlie is right that if we don't get, and he's right that I ran a campaign that was based on this and it lost, but it doesn't mean I was wrong, right? If we don't get a hold of what we're spending on entitlements in this country, we're finished. It will be the one thing that will kill us because with the greatest economy the world has ever seen, we are still outstripping our economic growth every day with what we're spending on entitlements and expanding entitlements, and it's going to kill our country. It'll be the thing that we look back on if our country declines and say, how didn't we do anything about that? And the reason is because we weren't strong enough to say it. And the second thing I'd say is to build off of what Michael said. When in 2008, when I left the U.S. Attorney's job and decided I want to run for governor in a state, by the way, you think you got it bad here, and you do, but we haven't elected a Republican to the United States Senate in 46 years. We have the longest streak of any state in America not to elect a Republican to the U.S. Senate. When I went down to the RNC and he was the chairman and said I wanted to run for governor, the thing he said to me was, I will help you, but not if you're going to run the same damn campaign that every Republican runs all the time. And instead, we went into cities.
That's right.
And we campaigned in places like Alicia and Charlie talked about, where I got yelled at and picketed on a regular basis. But for the 50 picketers were there were 10 people who were sitting there quiet, and they were the ones who were here to listen. And when they listened, they went back and they told their families, we can vote for this guy. And that's how you win. So if you want to win in California,
that's it.
Then start getting louder. My impression of Republicans here in California is you're scared. This is a scared group. Nobody, my grandmother told me a long time ago, Chris, fear is your greatest enemy. And we can't be afraid to speak for our values. And speak for our values, we're not going to win every time, especially not here. Same way we don't win every time in New Jersey. But man, when we do win, we cause huge havoc. And if you look at what I did the last 8 years in New Jersey, a lot of havoc, man, a lot of havoc. And when you get that opportunity, it's going to be a lot of fun. A lot of fun.
And please join me in thanking my panelists for the great discussion. Thank you all for being here. Have a good Politicon.
More now from the Politicon conference.